Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News Refresh on Arizona PBS. I'm Amna Sapan. Thanks for joining us. All January appointments for COVID-19 vaccines at State Farm Stadium have been filled, but there will soon be another location available. Governor Ducey and the Arizona Department of Health Services announced this morning that another stadium will soon become a distribution center. Phoenix Municipal Stadium near Papagayo Park will be open during daytime hours, not 24/7 like the one in Glendale. But Ducey says it will dramatically boost the number of Arizonans who can get the vaccine. President-elect Joe Biden will be sworn into office in less than 1 week. Governor Ducey announced today that he will attend the Wednesday inauguration. This comes after President Donald Trump said he would not attend earlier this month. In a statement, Ducey said, "In America, we believe in the peaceful transition of power. Doesn't matter who you supported in the election. Once the election is over, we put country before party." Like so many other events, the 2021 Waste Management Phoenix Open will look much different this year. The tournament's chairman announced Wednesday that fewer than 5,000 fans will be allowed in per day due to coronavirus concerns. In the past, 600 to 700,000 fans have attended the week-long tournament, which is scheduled for February 1st through the 7th. As the world adapted to a life during a pandemic, journalists also found new creative ways to do their jobs. The Cronkite News Refresh team sat down to discuss what they've learned.
Welcome to this week's Reporters Roundtable. I'm Caitlin Keenahan with Sarandon Merboyne and Amna Sapan. Everyone had to deal with change in 2020, and journalists are no exception. So if you turn on the TV, stories look different, sometimes they sound different, and of course, we've all gotten accustomed to filming in our homes like we are right now. Sarandon, what has your experience been with adjusting to the at-home environment as a sports journalist?
So it's definitely been a little bit of a challenge, and I've had to be more creative and innovative than I probably ever dreamed I would be in my career, right? I used to be able to go to games and then you would get your interviews there, you would get your B-roll, you would have exactly what the story was in line all in the same day, like all in the same 2 hours. It's not really the case anymore. Now I'll get a story idea, I'll reach out to some people for interviews on Zoom, like we're talking right now, and then I'll have to go on the internet and find some B-roll to be able to lay. So it's taken me at least a little bit longer to get my stories done. But there's been a few, I would like to say, a little bit of creativity laughs in my apartment as I'm trying to film my stand-ups or trying to track my own voiceovers. I'll be in my closet, like with blankets, and I have, if I'm filming something and I'm standing up, I'm pretty tall, I'm 5'10", and I was stacking ottomans and chairs, pots and pans, anything I could get a little bit of height to put my laptop on top of, and I was just praying to the Jenga gods that it was not gonna fall over. But it's definitely been a challenge, and overall has pushed me in a creativity level than I had ever thought before.
Amna, what did that look like on the digital side of things?
Not completely too different because we didn't have to, find B-roll or put these Zoom interviews that we're having on a package where sometimes they're in the car or they're on their phone and it's this way instead of, the regular horizontal. So it's been interesting to see. I've worked with Sarandon on a few stories, and then just watching her scound for B-roll and all that, it definitely makes you appreciate being on the digital side as opposed to on the broadcast.
Yeah, it's definitely been tough. I mean, I've even had my own experiences with, instead of, going out and filming something for an hour, instead I'm sitting there for maybe 3 or 4 hours animating something or making a graphic for it so that I can just cover the time allotted in the video. So no, it's been very tough. But besides us having to kind of transition into a home environment, the industry has also gone through some pretty significant changes in 2020. There's been a lot of turmoil that has led the industry to really adapt. Amna, can you talk to us a little bit about what you've seen in terms of the change in that?
Yeah, so objectivity, we all know, is a pillar in journalism, and it's drilled into us since we're students, and then we get into the field, and it's something we're supposed to keep in mind at all times. But we've really seen that challenge this year, especially when it came to the Black Lives Matter movement. And a lot of students at our school were wondering, am I being unethical if I write Black Lives Matter? And that was a debate going on, whether that's something objective or whether it's objective and more controversial. So Poynter had a really great article a few months ago talking about this, where they emphasize accuracy and transparency over objectivity, where embracing one's bias is all right as long as they're being accurate and they're being fair and seeking truth with that. For me personally, I don't find my background so much as a bias as a strength, and it's something we should embrace and learn about each other's backgrounds and their sort of biases. And then I'm not exactly talking politically, but it'll help us better understand the communities we cover and cover them more fairly with a better lens.
That is something that we all kind of learned this year, is that everyone comes from different backgrounds, and it is a strength to be able to use those in reporting. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. In addition to that, the dynamic of journalists have really changed in society as well, just because there has been a much larger amount of distrust in journalists in the year of 2020, somewhere between the pandemic, it being an election year, and President Donald Trump's fake news kind of push that he has had over the course of the past few years. It's been a really hard year to be a journalist. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of important things for us to be out in the world and covering, but at the same time, you have people that don't want to talk to you because you're a journalist, or don't believe in the work that you're doing. I mean, I've gotten my fair share of emails that were pretty frightening about the media. So I don't know if you guys have felt the same way. Sarandon, have you seen that at all in your experience out reporting and stuff?
There's been a lot of people who have been a little bit hesitant to talk to the media or to talk to me as a journalist. And they're like, well, how are you going to edit this? And my main ideal is I'm not going to edit it to a certain script that I'm writing, but I'm going to edit it to tell your story in the most effective way. It is still your story, and I want you to tell it in your words. That's why I'm talking to you, and I want to get your voice out there to something that should be heard.
Yeah, I really feel like it's that moment where we really have to ensure people, you know, we're giving a voice to the voiceless, and that's our job, and we're trying to help you and share your story and vocalize it. So yeah, no, definitely. I've had to say that to my fair share of people as well, and it's been an interesting experience. But I'm happy to close the chapter on 2020 and move on to 2021. I can't wait to see what this year holds for us as journalists. But that is it for this edition of the Reporters Roundtable. Thanks for joining us.
Coming up on Cronkite News, political ad spending smashed records in Phoenix this election season. We'll take a look back at where the cash came from and why it matters. And on Break It Down, how wearing a face mask turned into a political firestorm.
Hey, I'm Rick Steves. You know, I don't go anywhere without my passport. Thanks to PBS Passport, you can watch all my travel specials. This exclusive streaming service is just for our members. Not only can you see all my shows, but you can see thousands of hours of your favorite public television shows. Become a member today.
And welcome to Cronkite News Refresh on Arizona PBS.
Well, the dry spell has ended. Rain finally fell over the valley last night.
Here's what's trending today.
I'm with Sarandon and Amna.
Good evening, and welcome to Cronkite News Refresh on Arizona PBS.
Voter suppression is a nationwide issue that is likely to occur in every election. Anti-intimidation laws are in place to protect against voter interference. Reporter Faith Abercrombie talked to several different groups to learn how to prevent it and report it.
Voter intimidation is a scare tactic used that leads to voter suppression.
So at the federal level, there are a number of criminal prohibitions on voter intimidation. There's also civil provisions that allow people to be sued for intimidating voters. And then in Arizona specifically, there is a specific state law that makes it a misdemeanor to intimidate any person for voting for a candidate, for refraining from voting, or to vote against another candidate.
Sending threatening emails or campaigning within a polling location can lead to serious consequences.
If anybody is intimidating voters or committing election fraud, the penalties are significant. You're looking at a large fine or jail time.
The state of Arizona requires a 75-foot perimeter around every voting location to avoid intimidation. Some activities that are prohibited include electioneering or carrying firearms or weapons of any sort. Your ballot selfies from home are okay, but any pictures or videos taken within the 75-foot distance can count as a misdemeanor.
The poll workers are trained to de-escalate the situation if they're able to, like ask the people to leave, but then they have a designated troubleshooter that they would reach out to if they weren't able to diffuse the situation on their own.
A group called the Lincoln Project partnered with the Democracy Labs to create the initiative See Something, Say Something 2020. During the 2018 midterm election, about 1,133 voters reported a problem on Election Day, yielding about 623 valid reports.
It's not an app. You don't have to download anything. If you just go to csay2020.com, there's a brief form to fill out. You should put your name, your contact information, and then what happened, and then any photo or video evidence you have of it. It's really, really simple. We don't release people's names publicly. The only reason we track them is if we see something particularly egregious, we want to be able to follow up with whoever saw it.
Every ballot cast is completely anonymous. Any signs of voter intimidation should always be reported immediately. Faith Abercrombie, Cronkite News.
CSAY 2020 is up and running for this year's election. You can also report any signs of voter interference to poll workers, county election officials, or law enforcement.
Political ad spending is smashing records in Phoenix this election season. Cronkite News politics reporter Alex Gall dug into where the cash is coming from and why it matters for the future of Arizona politics.
If you live in Arizona, it's been hard to escape these.
It's time for Washington to solve problems, not create more of them.
And these.
The most important election of a lifetime.
Political ads have been all over the airwaves in Phoenix in the run-up to the 2020 elections. But it wasn't always that way.
As a fourth-generation Arizonan, we used to not get one presidential ad in this state, not one, on television. Nothing, zero. That started changing about 10 years ago.
Phoenix has seen a sharp uptick in political spending, starting with Barack Obama's first presidential bid in 2008. But even experts couldn't predict the record spending in 2020, even far down the ticket.
The advertising is getting a lot deeper, meaning that it's not just these big races. We saw a lot of advertising from different congressional districts. It's amazing at how important every seat is right now.
Rich Barone is the vice president at Cox Media, which serves over 1 million homes in the Phoenix market. Barone attributes the record spending levels to a changing Arizona electorate that's turning the traditionally red state purple.
I think what you're seeing is the Democratic Party senses a weakening in Arizona and is just going nonstop to try and flip it Democratic.
An analysis done by data firm Advertising Analytics ranked Phoenix the #1 individual political ad market in the country, edging out other battlegrounds like Pittsburgh, Orlando, and Detroit.
The most important part of Arizona from an electoral perspective, Maricopa County, is all within the Phoenix DMA. So you can really put all of your money into this one market instead of kind of diluting it across 6 or 7 markets like some of these other big states.
Advertising Analytics' data shows a large spending gap between Republicans and Democrats in Arizona, with Democrats outspending Republicans by over $65 million across the state's top 4 races this year.
It's not necessarily normal for Arizona, but it is kind of the trend of this year that we've seen across the board, all the way from the top of the ticket down to local races, is that Democratic candidates in particular are really fundraising really well.
And while over 1 million Arizonans have already cast their ballots, it's safe to say you'll be seeing more ads like this now and for the foreseeable future.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
In Phoenix, Alex Gall, Cronkite News.
New tonight, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine released a report that outlines a framework to improve health care for patients with sickle cell disease, a condition that disproportionately affects Blacks and Hispanics. Cronkite News reporter Harry Croton found out more from stakeholders about how this bodes for the disease, research, and treatment. Harry? Sickle cell is the most common inherited blood disorder in the U.S., affecting some 100,000 people and occurring in 1 out of every 365 Black or African American births. But the country and the state of Arizona still have a long way to go to better understand the disease. The improvement process begins with several key factors. The exact number of those who suffer from sickle cell disease is unknown. To get a better handle of the numbers, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention began a data collection program back in 2015. But only 9 states are enrolled, and Arizona isn't one of them.
Sickle cell is really the first molecularly characterized disease that we know exactly what caused it and how it caused it. But especially until only last year, very few treatments were available.
The lack of specific U.S. data has made the research process difficult, and the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine's near 500-page report outlines a plan to address the issue by increasing funding, broadening research, and most importantly, lowering costs for treatment.
There are multiple potentially curative therapies that are in the pipeline, but they're highly expensive, and we need to understand how to pay for them so we don't get trapped in a situation which I would say is worse than not having a cure, and that is having a cure that no one can get.
Another focus laid out in the report is improving the availability of healthcare professionals like hematologists, particularly in rural areas and communities of color. Martha Liggett of the American Society of Hematology says with the help of grants, they'll be able to add more sickle cell disease research and treatment centers across the country.
We're working on more general distribution for hematologists and for other healthcare providers and nurses and PAs. I mean, we need a whole team of people that are educated about how to deliver care properly.
Some experts say the lack of research and data has left patients feeling neglected. But Brett Jawar says part of the solution is placing a greater emphasis on funding.
Despite the fact that the CDC has a lot of money, it's really in buckets that it needs to be spent for. So you can't take funding out of measles and put it into sickle cell disease. So it's very important for all of us as we push forward to make sure there's advocacy for funding.
With additional funding, providers, and research, the report estimates 9 million children with sickle cell disease traits could be saved by the year 2050. Brooke Cook of the Sickle Cell Foundation of Arizona says just increasing awareness of the disease is one of the biggest challenges here. The foundation hosts virtual sessions to keep patients and their families informed. With just 3 hospitals in the state that specialize in sickle cell disease research and treatment, the National Academy's plan could help on both fronts. In the broadcast center, Harry Croton, Cronkite News.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us. For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.